Hizmet movement is tremendously valuable, especially in North America and perhaps throughout Europe and all the world, as representing Islam as a religion with a strong spiritual commitment, but not one which condemns people whose spiritual connections or non-spiritual connections are otherwise. Interfaith dialogue. So destroying the world. Apart from sectarianism and his My name is John Whyte. Right now I'm a professor emeritus, which means retired professor in the Department of Political and International Studies at the University of Regina. Most of my career, though, has been in law faculties in a number of Canadian universities. My most strong impression is one of amazement. I'm amazed at the scope and size of the Hizmet movement. I'm amazed that I did not know about the Hizmet movement before I was approached by the Intercultural Dialogue Institute, which seems, in retrospect, strange given its global presence and the breadth of its involvement in civil society, and the importance of the thought of Mr. Fethullah Gulen to really Turkish and world peace and harmony. So I was amazed to learn about it and its scope. And then as I learned more, I was, of course, impressed by its breadth. I was also deeply impressed by its underlying philosophy, the philosophy of service to humankind in all its needs. The only thing I'd say about Fethullah Gulen is that a great contribution to the whole globe, that a man comes along and says, to young people especially, your frustration with those who you don't agree with has led you to destruction and death and purging and fighting, and that is not going to create the world that you truly deeply want. The world you want is the world that is good for everyone, and that begins with understanding everyone. That begins with accepting that people have views which you don't agree with, views which you think are destructive and harmful, but it doesn't mean that you can try and destroy those people who hold those views. You need to all the time seek to construct peace, to act with love. These are powerful ideas, and one has to admire and celebrate those people in the world who have represented that. And that includes, for me, in my religion, it includes Jesus. It includes Martin Luther King Jr. It includes Nelson Mandela. It includes Sister Teresa. It includes Fethullah Gulen. So that's what I want to say about Fethullah Gulen. He joins a panoply of people who have advanced one simple idea, that we will have the world that is good for all people when we learn to live in it peacefully. The most significant contribution, I think, is, I would start by saying, is a model of how one can begin to influence civil society towards peace and harmony, away from conflict and purges and death. To do that through really two chief ways. One is just talking about the need for cooperation, reconciliation, peace. Just talking to people about the best interests in all people's lives is to approach each other with mutual respect and openness, with an open heart, and with a willingness and a hope to improve all people's lives. The second thing, I'm impressed by the initiatives that were started in order to promote these kinds of ideas in civil society on a broad basis. I think there is nothing else that I know of in the world that is such an extensive social organization. There's certainly nothing in Canada that is as significantly present in the lives of the country, or in the United States, as significantly present in the lives of that nation towards developing peaceful coexistence and peaceful relations. So as I said before, the breadth of the initiatives, the physical, material initiatives that he took to improve people's lives, particularly, of course, in education with young people. A great, not the most novel insight in the world, but nevertheless a great insight that the working with young people, the encouragement of young people to choose the route of peace as a recipe for a stable and just society is really wonderful. As I say, he's not the first person who has hoped for much from education. Many great leaders have, but the organization and the development of an educational system to achieve that is really remarkable. It certainly represents Islam as a religion of accommodation and peace, a religion of acceptance, I would say, and a religion of respectfulness not only to each other, but respectfulness to creation, respectfulness to God, respectfulness to the spiritual aspect of human existence. But it represents Islam as a religion of peace and cooperation, compassion, and living well together in the context of differences. Of course, that's not the general notion of Islam in much of North America. Islam is seen as rapidly situated around a particular conception of divine revelation. So Hizmet movement is tremendously valuable, especially in North America and perhaps throughout Europe and all the world, as representing Islam as a religion with a strong spiritual commitment, but not one which condemns people whose spiritual connections or non-spiritual connections are otherwise. And that's, I wish that all religious leaders would adopt the same spirit of acceptance, pluralism, diversity, and interfaith acceptance. I actually haven't been to an specific interfaith dialogue, so I haven't seen how that works in practice. As a concept, interfaith dialogue is, I think, the most significant practice the world can engage in. Well, actually, I think reducing carbon energy is the most significant thing the world can engage in. But at the social level, as opposed to the physical level, I think that interfaith dialogue is essential. The world is suffering mightily, and killing is happening at a pace which is totally unacceptable, largely on the basis of faith differences. And the faith differences, as it turns out, are differences of particular structures of revelation, particular narratives of the spiritual experience of humankind, particular conceptions of divinity's form and divinity's action amongst us. These are actually tiny, tiny differences, and it's insane that we have so much anger and bitterness and killing around these religious differences. It's crazy that we adopt interpretations of divine revelation and stick to them with such vehemence that we can't tolerate anyone who wants to question or examine or explore them. interfaith dialogue allows that to happen. It asks, what is significant in that story of revelation in your life? What in that narrative do you think you want to cling to? Can you understand our narrative and what matters to us and how we are informed and improved and spiritually enlivened by that narrative? These dialogues have to happen in the world. There has to be acceptance, and the interfaith dialogue ambition of the Gulen movement is one of the truly great things that it is doing. I wish I had more actual experience with it. In fact, I wish I had more actual experience with interfaith dialogue wherever it occurred. The first thing I want to talk about is what I think of the Hizmet emphasis on education. I think it is a wonderful initiative, a wonderful strategy. There is a huge amount of poverty, dispossession, exclusion of people in the world, and that gets visited on children with a vengeance. And it is intergenerational. Once that happens, children are unable to live well, to contribute well, to be good citizens of their society and good citizens of the world. And education of children is really the most important thing we can do to make the world a better place for everyone. Lift children away from the ravages of poverty and exclusion and include them in wisdom and knowledge so that they can participate and help the world and themselves have meaningful lives. So the Hizmet emphasis on education is wonderful. I have visited one Hizmet school. It was not in term time, so I didn't see a lot of education activity, but I really liked the school, and there was a conference going on there at that time of actually teachers of English. This was in Istanbul, and it had a wonderful spirit, and I was very pleased to see an operating school. As for Hizmet schools in regions of conflict, well, children, I think, can be fairly easily turned away from anger and destruction, hatred and rejection. I think children have an instinct to be open to the joys of human friendship and human relationship. It's immensely important to them. It's the way they survive. And so getting people of different perspectives and different sects and different experiences together in a school and providing some opportunity for the difference to be recognized and named and accepted is a wonderful social enterprise. I have no direct experience about whether the Hizmet schools in conflict zones have such a powerful effect on children that when they go home, they begin to influence their parents and begin to challenge their parents' own biases and their own hatreds, or not, I don't know. But it's always a hope that children will have the true wisdom, the deep wisdom that people need to live together in peace if they are encouraged to have that wisdom and to understand that that is the core of their well-being and everybody's well-being. As I've said before, Hizmet constantly amazes at the vastness of the enterprises that it has initiated and that it now manages and runs, and the extent to which service is provided not only in Turkey but around the world through those organizations. So the aid organizations are part of that sense of being amazed at the scope of the aid and assistance that Hizmet is trying to provide. I don't have any real familiarity with economic organizations, except we did meet when I was in Istanbul, an organization that was a kind of conglomeration of workers groups, trade unions in other words, and again, I was very impressed at the extent to which that group was trying to work in the field of international standards for workers, which is immensely important because there's so many parts of the world where, although labor laws are sound in some places, in those parts, workers are exploited, and we need strong international regimes and strong international norms. So Hizmet's idea of how to meet people's needs is broad and it's extensive, and it's very positive.
We all need to have a role to get off the chair and get up and help others. So, and I've seen that. Mr. Gulen has gotten off the chair and helped people around the world with the movement.
So the Hizmet movement then has tried to articulate and be a spokes voice for a more moderate vision of what it is that Islamic sensitivities are.